So I was having a coffee with a colleague last week, and she made this comment that got me thinking. She said, well, women are just naturally better at multitasking than men. It's science. And I realized I'd heard this claim so many times that I just accepted it as fact. But then I started wondering, is this actually true? So I spent the last few weeks diving deep into the research on gender and multitasking, and what I found was way more complicated than I expected. This is a story about how a widely believed scientific fact might not be as clear-cut as we think, and the real explanation behind this myth reveals something much more interesting about our society than our biology. Okay, so first I wanted to understand where this belief even comes from. As it turns out, this idea is everywhere. Surveys show that over 80% of people believe women are better multitaskers than men. You see it in movies, TV shows, workplace conversations, parenting discussions. It's become the accepted wisdom that women can juggle multiple tasks better than men because their biology is wired for it. The scientific research on this actually started in the early 2000s. Researchers began testing whether there were real gender differences in multitasking ability, and here's where it gets interesting. When I went through all the major studies from the last 2 decades, I found something unexpected. The results are all over the place. Some studies say women are better, some say there's no difference, and some actually suggest men might have certain advantages. So what's really going on here? Let me walk you through what the actual science shows, because the methodology here really matters. In 2013, researchers in the UK tested 240 people, 120 women and 120 men, on computer-based multitasking. They found that women performed slightly better at switching between tasks quickly. The effect size was small, Cohen's d of 0.27, but statistically significant. But then in 2019, German researchers published a comprehensive study in PLOS ONE. They tested 96 people across multiple types of multitasking scenarios. Their conclusion, quote, without a single significant gender difference in any of these 10 measures. And here's where it gets even more interesting. A 2020 study found that men actually performed better at what researchers called concurrent multitasking, doing 2 things simultaneously, while women and men were equal at sequential multitasking, that's switching between tasks. Harvard Business Review looked at all this research and published an article titled "Women and Men are Equally Bad at Multitasking." Their conclusion? Both genders struggle with multitasking, just in different ways. I'm looking at a comprehensive review right now that analysed dozens of studies. The pattern is clear. The evidence for gender differences in multitasking is mixed at best, and any differences that do exist are very small. But there's another layer to this story. Neuroscientists have actually looked at what happens in the brain when people multitask. Researchers in Russia used MRI brain scans to monitor people switching between tasks. What they found was fascinating. Men's brains activated more areas and used more resources when multitasking compared to women's brains. Men showed more activation in the prefrontal cortex, parietal lobe, and supplementary motor areas. Women's brains seemed to handle task switching more efficiently. But here's the twist. This efficiency didn't translate to better performance. Both groups performed equally well on the actual tasks. Men's brains just had to work harder to achieve the same result. So, the brain differences are real, but they don't necessarily mean better multitasking ability. But as I kept digging, I realized I was looking at all of this wrong. The real story isn't about biology, it's about experience and social roles. Multiple studies show that women do significantly more multitasking in daily life than men do. They're more likely to be managing household chores, childcare, and work responsibilities simultaneously. Australian research found that working mothers spend 4 hours more per week juggling work and family activities than working fathers. 4 hours more of multitasking per week. Studies on media multitasking showed women are more experienced at combining activities like listening to music while texting or browsing social media while watching TV. And here's the crucial point that researchers keep emphasizing. Being experienced at multitasking doesn't mean being better at it biologically, it just means you do it more often. The myth confuses experience with innate ability. So what's the real takeaway here? The science suggests that men and women have roughly equal multitasking abilities, with small differences that vary depending on the specific type of task. But the belief persists because women are doing more multitasking in real life, not because they're biologically better at it. They're managing more responsibilities, juggling more roles, handling more concurrent demands. This has real consequences. If we assume women are naturally better at multitasking, we might unconsciously assign them more of this cognitive load at work and at home. Recent research shows that this leads to increased stress and poorer mental health outcomes for women. The difference between doing more multitasking and being better at multitasking is crucial. One is about social expectations and role distribution. The other would be about biology. This story reveals something important about how scientific myths develop. We observe a pattern, women doing more multitasking, and we create a biological explanation for a social phenomenon. If this investigation into scientific myths was interesting to you, all the studies I've referenced are linked in the description, and let me know what other widely held beliefs you'd like me to dig into next.